Hi everybody, it's Ildi here. And okay, so this part of the video is going to be about the film that I've just seen, which is none other than Burn the Stage, the BTS movie. Okay guys, so I don't know how many of you had the luck to see some elements or some parts or maybe even whole episodes of the BTS documentary that was done in cooperation with YouTube Premium. I myself a bit of a content freak, so I am actually someone who is like subscribed to YouTube Premium, so I was very happy when this happened because I was able to, see the episodes. But I know that for many this is not an easy thing to do because YouTube Premium only works in a couple of countries. So it's like, some people would love to see it, but they simply can't do it, in an official way. So again, this is where amazing armies come to the picture so we can share the content. Okay, so what happened this weekend? I'm a bit, under the weather, but I decided that this only plays one weekend, so I'm going to go and to see the new movie by myself, by the way, but that's okay. You guys know that we are this K-pop loving channel with many K-pop fans, but we're all scattered around the UK. So most of us, we don't live in the same place. So sometimes it's hard to organize for all the shoots and also hard to organize to watch the film together. But I can't wait to discuss it with all the BTS loving friends. Okay, went to see the film. And the whole film, guys, again, apologize if this is a spoiler alert. If you are going to see it later on and you don't want any spoilers, please stop here and just skip the video, because I don't want to ruin the experience for you. Okay, I actually made a lot of notes because this is what I do when I go into a cinema. I usually make notes, so I apologize when I'm going to read a couple of things out loud, because it was weirdly thought-provoking. Actually, I made 6 pages of notes. This is crazy. Let's see, the whole film started with a BT21 advert, which was just, absolutely super cute. It's almost like I thought that is this the intro? This is how we are going to introduce the members. It was one of the clear signs that this movie was clearly for the fans. So for us, I would have accepted an intro with the BT21 characters because, we know who these people are. But if anybody who's not a fan comes in, they were just, okay, this doesn't make any sense. But obviously this was kind of like the audience in the cinema was it looked to me, I don't want to make any assumptions, but it looked to me that everybody was a BTS fan already. I'm also sure that was very cute. I already wanted to, buy the stuff, and I sadly got remembered my experience when in the beginning of this year, I was in Japan, just when the Face Yourself album was released, and they were supposed to open a shop in the middle of Tokyo for BT21, and I went there desperately. I queued up, and what happened? That they delayed the opening by a week, and obviously I traveled back home by then, so I was like, this is just typical, but anyway. So I got reminded that I need to get some merchandise anyway. But okay, back to the film. Guys, that this video is kind of like the second part to this whole BTS concert review. And even though this was a different tour, and I already mentioned this, but even though this was a different tour, it made me relive the concert all over again. Because obviously, a lot of backstage materials were shown about, how they prepare, and not just what happens exactly when they come off stage. And the Wings tour itself was really magical. If you guys remember, the visuals, it was very sensual. It had that dramatic effect. I kind of got reminded how grand these shows are. When you again see it after a big stage, you see it on a big screen, and you see all the close-ups and the beautiful views from the middle, and then you would see the Prudential Center, or you would see all these amazing arenas and the domes in Japan, and you would just realize that these concerts are gigantic, they are massive. And also, thanks to the amazing backstage footage, we would see that it takes not just an army to, give wings to BTS, but it takes this army to support them as well. The amount of people, that were there to make the sound perfect. if there was one shot when you would see all the, you know, sound engineers and kind of like the music director sitting in the big arena, and I'm not joking, there were at least 15 screens, and I can't even imagine how many pads to kind of, you know, organize the sounds differently. So that was like, oh my god, this is a massive production. It's absolutely insane, like how many people it takes to make it happen. So it really made me appreciate like how much work it is and how much teamwork it is, because everybody plays an important role. If there is nobody there to make sure that the sound is adjusted in that one earpiece that Suga is wearing, then something can easily go off. So guys, I will try my best to talk about different aspects. One is being the content, basically the footage that we saw. If you were lucky enough to see the burn the stage stuff, you kind of got similar footage but from different angles. And the take that they had on the footage, like basically how they used it, was again telling the same story but from a different angle with a different tone, and that's something that we are going to talk about later. So it didn't feel like a recycled you know, kind of footage at all. I think there were a couple of scenes that I remember, that I recognized that this is the same footage, but very, very few. So it felt different. It wasn't, you know, the same at all. In terms of the footage, what I absolutely loved, and the content, and this is going to go into the editing, that the whole thing felt very intimate, but without kind of breaching their privacy, if you get what I mean. Obviously, it took, you know, 6 to 7 years to kind of build up this confidence and this trust with the fandom, that we accept the lack of footage, kind of showing what happens after, because we know what happens after. We know, I mean, not we know the guys, but we kind of feel that we know them. So in terms of how they depicted emotions with the footage, it was all very subtle. So for example, there was this one scene when the issue was also portrayed in the Burned Stage documentary already on the YouTube Premium 20-minute thing, when Jimin felt very sad and almost, I would say almost to the point of being devastated about a mistake that he made. And he almost like he didn't want to talk to anybody, and just didn't feel sharing, and just like, you know, when you're drowning in your own self-hatred, and then you are like, I'm not sure I'm good enough. And obviously it was very heartbreaking to see. But usually what I found very, like, really, really cool and really amazing, how they kind of resolved the problem in terms of, you know, showing it in the content, wasn't like, okay, hey Jimin, sit in front of a camera and tell us how you feel. And another person, tell us how you feel when you looked at Jimin. Instead, the whole scene was just him going into the waiting room, everybody, or like people looking a bit worried, and then we seeing Jimin's, you know, sad emotions, and he just went there, grabbed his arm, and took him out. You know what, we're gonna talk and I'm gonna help you. And that was it. And that's something that in terms of the tone of the documentary, I found really refreshing. I love music biopics, and I really like music documentaries as well, and I myself study documentary filmmaking. And I was almost struck by how layered and how subtle the depiction of emotions were, instead of making it very direct, like I'm sad, I feel angry, I this and that. It was all about kind of like this teamwork and the relationships with each other, with themselves, and how they kind of overcome things. But, and again, there was another lovely scene where you could see, I think it was again Jimin, when he's being lifted up in the Lie choreography. And I think Jungkook, I can't remember, but I think probably Jungkook, we just saw him from behind looking at Jimin and how the stage is coming together. And again, this was just a scene showing the pride that they feel when they see each other perform. Or I'm guessing this was just one of the emotions. Probably there is more, but one of the emotions that you can get. And again, instead of somebody saying it out loud, you could just feel it. And it was all in the angles, it was in the music, it was in the shading, and it was kind of like showing it with a scene. And again, it was a really good metaphor for the whole relationship between the members, and also between this whole sometimes unexplainable relationship with the fandom, and why are they so big, and why is, you know, why can be the genre big. You don't need words to tell these emotions. Just the fact that they exist validates their reality. In the cinematography, that was done really beautifully without being forced. So now that we kind of, you know, talked about the footage used, and also kind of about the tone, I want to mention something about the structure of the film. So the structure of the film was quite unique and quite interesting in terms of, you know, music documentaries and music biopics. What usually happens is kind of like the kind of rags to riches story. That's something that often comes up when somebody is doing a documentary about an artist for the first time. Again, this kind of was interesting because this film was clearly for the fans. This is something I mentioned before. So they didn't need to do that. It suddenly felt like you are just starting a book in the middle. You are opening it up and they are already, you know, doing the concert, and obviously it's kind of about the concert and like what happens afterwards. But still, seeing this on a big screen in a big cinema, not in the comfort of your home, was just something a bit, you know, unusual. And in terms of this whole rags to riches kind of story, it usually starts with like all the struggles that we faced, that the hardships that we went through, and now we succeeded, and like that's the end. But as one of my, you know, favorite, you know, Korean team channels, DK TV, in the review they already mentioned and surprised them as well, the footage about their early years was used towards the end, and almost like a juxtaposition of the success that we are seeing now. And again, in terms of the structure, the editing style was, you know, not forcefully, but it almost reminded you in again this documentary style, very real way, what it really takes to put on these amazing shows. That means that they often cut from the glamour and the lights right away to the real struggles of actually being a performer of this genre. AKA they were treated by you know, different members of the medical team on their ankles, on their shoulders. They were doing different exercises, just trying to, you know, keep their level of fitness up. And, you know, ice packets on their neck, on their head, on their shoulder, basically every part of their body, trying to catch their breath. But what to me felt interesting, maybe again it was kind of down to the music, or down to the music and down to the editing style, that this wasn't something that you suddenly felt like, oh, this is a dramatic cut. You almost felt like this is a natural part of what they do. And even though I was, throughout the whole thing, I was sometimes like laughing, but also at the verge of crying after 5 minutes, just because you see the struggle. And obviously for somebody you like, that doesn't matter who that person is, but like if you like somebody, you don't like to see them that way. But if that's just the case it is, then you know, this is what comes with it. And they were almost very natural about that, instead of, you know, glorifying the pain or showing it that, you know what, this is what I do for you. This is just part of their existence and part of their lifestyle. This is the kind of, you know, price we pay. The tension was constantly up, so there was no point in the story when, oh, but this was clearly a big problem and now we have to solve, and then that's sort of, you know, kind of typical narrative. That didn't exist. It was kind of like this slice of a life kind of feeling, but the tension was constantly up. You constantly felt the warmth, but sometimes, you know, the coldness of an empty arena, which then it's going to be filled with people, or like the intimacy of being in a hotel room, but at the same time of this kind of restrictive loneliness of being caged in almost. And like, you know, being very happy when you get the opportunity to just, you know, to go out and walk and, you know, shop some stuff. And like, you know, and Suga was absolutely adorable when he you know, mentioned like how happy he is that he was able to purchase some equipment, some musical equipment that's not available in Korea, and he was just like, oh, you know, this makes me really, really happy. But again, that was something that felt a bit unusual in terms of the genre, the music documentary genre that we are used to. Again, when it comes to the narrative, what's the challenging thing with these music documentaries is that you are trying to build attention towards a topic where you already know the end. You kind of already know the story, since this is a factual program. So these are the kind of like in the news. These are facts. These are kind of like, you can Google it, whatever. But what draws people in is to confirm what they think they know is true or not. So that was something that again was done with a lot of care, a lot of respect. And it felt a beautiful cinematic addition with all the content that we already received. So again, it was a challenge, but a comfortable place for the filmmakers as well, I'm guessing, because they didn't need to explain a lot of things. And this is something that I mentioned earlier in terms of displaying and showing the emotions. In terms of the tone, guys, there was one thing that it reminded me of, and even when I left the theater, there was this lingering feeling of melancholy almost. But that's not a bad thing at all. It's just more about like, it felt very real and gripping, but not in a way that would hurt you, but just in a way that lingers and stay for a long time in your heart. And 2 weeks ago, sorry, we went to the K-pop Academy here in the UK, to London, to the Korean Cultural Center, and we had a lesson this time about Korean etiquette and manners and just kind of customs in general. And there was this one thing that a lecturer mentioned about a Korean concept, and also a word that kind of describes both deep sorrow but also the hope that comes along with it. And the expression is called han, and that's something that suddenly clicked for me when I saw the film, that this is what the tone is. I myself, last year I worked at the London Korean Film Festival, and I saw a lot of indie films and documentaries and drama and all sorts of things. So, but more not on the mainstream side, but more on the indie side. And that's something that was very present, and I think it's also present in K-drama somehow. Feeling that everything that you experience have a deeper meaning, and not just have, but has to have a deeper meaning. Emotions shouldn't be taken lightly. And that's something that was beautifully kind of shown in the whole film. This deep sorrow that's felt through lifetimes and bounded by fate. One of the last sentences that we heard was RM's narration, talking about like how we are bounded by fate, we are bounded together. And it definitely set the tone. And also showed this kind of deep sorrow that everything that we do has a price. And the working hard, that's the price that comes along with it. With sacrifice, pain, and self-doubt, they're just, being part of it, and no matter how hard we try, it's not gonna go away. It felt very philosophical. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, and I apologize to our native English speakers on this one. So that was again something very present, and this whole tone was set by the narration, which at first I was a bit bothered by, because I wanted the members themselves narrate the whole thing. It was written in a way that sounded like a member would say it, that this is how we feel, and then we saw the lights and da. But it was actually a neutral voice reading it out loud. But towards the end, Suga and RM joined in, and they were doing some narration themselves. And wow, that hit hard. That was something that just, really made it real. That these are their own words, that these are their emotions. They're very gracious to share it with us in this way. They weren't afraid to show from the very beginning, or talk about members themselves, talk about the fleeting and transitory aspect of popular culture, and which includes them, very much includes them nowadays. They are a prominent figure of now not just Eastern popular culture, but they are becoming a prominent figure in Western popular culture as well. And to talk about that bravely and also like in a philosophical way, which accepts the reality but embraces the future, for me was very refreshing. Because that's something that concentrated concentrated on the bigger picture and concentrated on the concepts and the meaning behind all this, instead of concentrating on the self and talking about themselves constantly. It was all about what this phenomenon is, what the music means, and that was such a big part of the whole film. The music was very, very well done in terms of a real fan treat. We were able to hear some strings versions of one of my favorite songs on a hidden track called C, which also served as kind of like a section introduction, section narrative throughout the whole thing, because they kind of were trying to put things into a chapter, and there were 3 chapters, and one of them being desert, and then together, and the third one was ocean. And these are all elements from that one song, which I made a t-shirt of recently, and I was thinking that it was a very meaningful song, and I almost feel a bit proud when then they use the same lyrics to kind of put this film into a structure. I was like, I think I understood a tiny part of them. For example, when we were able to hear a strings version of C, and there were also parts from Spring Day, but again, we heard orchestrated version of Spring Day already, so that wasn't a surprise. But that just felt very, very uplifting. The songs that they were showing to us, it was Hatuse, it was Move, kind of even, what's that song? What's Popping Girl? I think it's probably from the second album. So there were a lot of fan favorite songs, and like Everybody Say No. So basically, even elements from the concert that weren't the big hits necessarily, that everybody would know, but the songs that the fans love and feel that they are meaningful to them, but weren't shown that often. So again, that was just really special, and I absolutely loved it. I think using the song C was a really amazing way of kind of, again, relying on their own material, because they already have it. The music itself and the lyrics itself speaks volumes, and it's almost like they don't have to draw on any outside sources to kind of explain who they are. They can just use their own output and what they create, and obviously that's something that's an extremely reflective process. And that again was something that was for me striking when watching the film. Usually when you watch like a music documentary, you always have this, like, somebody just blindly goes into this path of fame and then becomes somebody, and then the reflection comes from the outside, or reflection comes from in terms of a challenge that they need to face, and then they overcome it, and that's where the happy ending comes. In this one, they were reflecting constantly. It was almost an exercise to kind of go through ourselves, because it wasn't something that just like one big revelation, but a constant improvement. And there was an interesting quote, I think, probably it was RM who said it, because they were growing so fast as a group. It's hard to grow yourself individually as well, parallel. It just takes a lot of work, and it takes time to grow. RM was full of amazing quotes, so is Suga, and so is everybody, really. Because the quotes, in my eyes, doesn't necessarily come from words. It can also come from a lovely moment, an amazing interaction, or just, pure fan service that nobody can do better than Jin, that just warms your heart and really show the sincerity, even if it's a joyful way of showing that sincerity. It's there. You don't have somebody prepare that much if they don't care. They do care, and it was portrayed very well. Again, how they treat the staff and like leadership skills of RM, and that was again really cool. And I love the fact that they included a bit of a meeting with Bank PD. I mean, it was kind of, I love that business side of things, because obviously this is a massive business as well, that needs to be in place to support them. Otherwise the machine can't move forward. They need the staff, they need the marketing team, they need the people who help them move forward. And those people are putting in a lot of heart, a lot of creativity, and they are amazing. So the meeting with Ben PD, what was very lovely, when he kind of, you know, talked about how the reception was in the US, about their latest performances. This was before the AMA. And also he mentioned that you have to be happy yourselves. And I think, and I can't remember which member, was probably RM, who then mentioned that, like, they have to work on their own happiness and their own joy, otherwise the messages won't be authentic. And again, that's just a key BTS thing. They need to be as genuine and as real as possible, otherwise they don't speak the truth. And again, that's something that completely came across in the film, that they were trying to speak general truth and their own truth as well. And they are, again, this reflection that I mentioned earlier definitely came from the fact that they are aware of what's kind of going around them, even if it's very hard to understand. That now it's an international community who they are trying to communicate to, and obviously with a lot of amazing fans who are translating everything. But that's a massive challenge that they are facing, and recent controversies just, you know, prove that it's so hard. It is so hard to kind of navigate towards the jungle of, you know, cultural appropriation and cultural differences, and they try their very best. There's one thing that I would like to mention to you, which was, it was a very lovely thing to see, like how they also saw how the fandom grow and how the relationship matured. And one beautiful quote that kind of showed that part was when some of the members said that when they made a mistake, they used to look down and didn't see anything but their own, you know, mistakes. And now when they make a mistake and they look down, they see the fans looking up at them and giving them encouragement and giving them, you know, faith and hope, and just to, you know, go forward. And that was a really beautiful metaphor, showing, like, you know, how this whole thing changed. Okay, guys, I think I could talk about this for hours, and I'm going to put together an article on this, which I'm going to, you know, post at some point and try to let you know, so you can read about it as well, because it's probably better than me just talking into a camera for like 15 minutes or whatever. But what I would like to probably close on, it was one of the, you know, notes. One of the quotes that RM said, I think. Race towards an uncertain future. Growth is a lovely journey on which we are happy to be together. And this is going to be our ending to our film review. And please, if you got the chance to see it, let us know what you thought. And we would love to continue the conversation as we, if not even racing, but in our own life, working hard and trying to find our dreams and work for our dreams. We race towards an uncertain future, and I'm happy that we are together. Thank you very much for watching, and see you guys very soon. Much love.